Welcome to Everyday Economics, the podcast that helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm your host, Chris Krug, CEO of the 501c3 nonprofit Franklin News Foundation. Everyday Economics is a production of America's Talking Network. You can check out all of our great podcasts at americastalking.com. To support podcasts such as Everyday Economics, please make your tax-deductible charitable contribution by clicking the link in the show description. We are recording today's episode on Friday, January 19th. And joining me as always, Dr. Orphe Divounguy, PhD economist. Dr. O, how are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing great. How are you, Chris?
Good. Let's jump right into it. The report came out from the realtors talking about December of 2023 being the worst on record with regard to home sales. The worst on record since 1995. I think that there was some speculation, in the month of December that it was going to be a rough year. We started to see some price reductions. And even though mortgage rates had started to come down in December, the numbers that came across the finish line fell short of expectation and fell short of historical marks. So what do we make of this?
Yeah, I think we kind of covered this on the podcast before. We have two things going on here. We have high mortgage rates affecting not just buyers, but also sellers, right? And existing homeowners were able to refinance into much lower rates during the pandemic. We're talking about 2 to 3% mortgage rates, really the leverage of a lifetime. And so they're sitting on low mortgage rates, low mortgage payments, and they are unlikely to want to trade that for today's much higher mortgage rates, right? And so as a result, the flow of existing homes coming on the market has actually declined when compared to last year. And builders are basically trying to fill the gap.
Let's get it. Let me ask you about builders. Let me get into that, because builder sentiment just came out, and builder sentiment is looking stronger. The new construction options seem to be winning. And part of that being the flexibility that a builder has with regard to discounting rate, to even, mortgage rates are improving, but they're still not great, as you just said. Builders have a little bit of leverage, at least something in their pocket that they can offer a buyer. But what are you seeing there in that space?
No, absolutely. An estimated 1.4 million homes were completed in 2023. That's a 4.5% increase from the previous year, according to the Census Bureau. Builders have a pipeline of homes, a backlog of homes that are still under construction. And when those homes come on the market, they're able to offer potential buyers rate buy downs, right? So regardless of what the rate is, they save you 2 points to get you through the door and close the deal. And so builders you see that the new home share of sales increasing because builders are able to do that. They're able to make the math work for potential home buyers.
Well, not to put you on the spot and make you do math, but when a builder would have that capability of offering a buyer a couple of points, what is that worth?
Well, it's worth thousands of dollars, right? It really depends. Sometimes they do a 2-to-1 rate buy down, where basically in the first 2 years of your mortgage, your mortgage rate is 2 points lower than, the prevailing mortgage rate. And so you're saving thousands. And then some builders are also able to add the closing cost, right? They'll say, hey, because I think a lot of buyers forget that you don't just need a down payment. You also need to be able to cover transaction costs of closing. And that's tens of thousands of dollars. And so you have builders that are actually able to say, hey, whether you use our lender or if we can close sooner, we'll take care of some of those closing costs. I'm always looking at the market, and you could see those incentives out there. The National Association of Home Builder reports an improvement in builder sentiment simply because, mortgage rates have eased somewhat since the 23-year peak in October. But also, right, that positive sentiment, that the market has had at the end of this year, of last year, with the Fed potentially pivoting from raising rates to lowering rates, has had a huge impact on yields. It's actually made it easier to finance some projects. And so builders are getting or likely going to go into 2024 feeling very, very good about their prospects in the next year.
Yeah, I was just checking Freddie Mac, this morning, national average 30-year fixed rate, 6.6%. I believe in October when we hit the top, the top of the top, that number was just a shade under 8.
That's correct. We got up to something like 7.9% in October. And so there's been a huge improvement. Remember, during the pandemic, prices soared and still you had a ton of activity in the housing market. You still had a ton of mortgage demand and people buying homes. It's not until you saw a big increase in mortgage rates that the housing market started to slow, right? That demand started to cool. The ability to stretch your payment over a 30-year period is huge. But when you combine high prices with high mortgage rates, it becomes a little bit tight and it brings affordability on its knees.
Yeah. And it sort of tracks. I mean, if mortgage rates hit their peak in October, typically 30, 60, 90 days to close on a home. I mean, most homes close, inside of 60 days. That's right.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because if you see the reporting on this in the news today, it's despite an improvement in new listing and the flow of homes coming on the market in December, we had fewer home sales. The reality is that ultimately those are homes that had to go under contract in October and November. And so at a time where mortgage rates are too high for a lot of people. And so it makes sense that the December existing home sales are lower. Now, the beautiful part about me working with Zillow is that I have access to data that is more real-time data, essentially. And when you look at newly pending sales, and newly pending sales are a leading indicator of existing home sales. In other words, right, we see a home go pending. And when you look at that, you see a massive improvement from minus 4.6% year over year in November to almost flat at minus 0.7% year over year in December, which basically tells me that existing home sales may have already bottomed and that we're likely going to see an improvement in the January number heading into the new year.
Well, that'll bring us to a close. Thanks as always, Dr. O. For Dr. Orphe Divounguy, this has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics at americastalking.com.
Enjoying our podcast? Your reviews help other listeners find our show. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you listen.